Hi, this is Michael Becker, and in this Tinderbox training, I provide you a quick demo on how to be able to scan your text using RegEx and then replace that text or wrap that text with a hide span so that for you as a writer, you can include codes within your text that help facilitate your writing, but for the reader, those can be hidden so that they don't disrupt the reading of your documents. So I hope you enjoy this quick little demo. And just as a side note, I did this as part of an impromptu training to fill in about 10 minutes or so of airtime when our guest speaker, Kathy Marshall, during the February 4th, 2024 meetup, had some internet problems. While we're waiting, if we want to do that 10-minute demo thing, I can show you something that I had to solve recently that was kind of interesting. There, Mark, you're on mute if you're talking.
Go for it. It's 12:30. Good.
Yeah, so I've
Good
got
point.
yeah, so let's take some we can just fill the time with learning something new. And I will try to keep this into the 10-minute demo example. All right. So here's this problem. As you all know, I'm in the final edits of my doctoral dissertation, and one of the challenges I came across was my chair when I'm writing up several of my statistics. My chair wanted me to, and so basically the way I was writing up my statistics would be, I would, talk about the variable age, or I talk about the variable how people identify, and then for the purposes of my own writing, I started putting into brackets the actual variable code that was used in the Excel spreadsheet and as well as in the statistics tools. So that way, when I'm scanning the text, I can quickly see, okay, which variables did I use in this particular part of my analysis. And so having that kind of visual call out was really important for me. It also allowed me to the facilitation of searching through the text in Tinderbox or running agents in the text in Tinderbox was a lot easier by just saying, go find me DF, any item with DF4 in it, versus, having to find strings of text. So for me as the writer, I found it very, very useful to have, have these different, call outs there. For my chair as the reader, however, she found it incredibly distracting after a while. And so what she asked me to do was, can you remove all of those? And in a 200-page document, I've got hundreds of them. And frankly, yes, I can remove them for your desire as the reader, but I don't want to remove them as my desire for the writer because they actually provide a significant benefit for me in performing my research. For, as I said, a number of the reasons are the capability to search, the capability to run agents. The other thing that it was interesting too is at one point I was calling like how to identify gender, and other times I would be I would just say how identify, and I'd drop out the term people. And so when I was writing, my use of the text wasn't as consistent as my use of the code. My use of the code was always consistent. DF4 meant, in some places gender, in some places how to identify, in some places people. And so with that in mind, having the code in there allowed me to do a quick search, go through the entire 200-page document of the, I don't know, 500 notes that were, maybe even 1,000 notes were in this particular document. Here are the 40 that have that DF4 in it, and then I can go change it to drive and make consistency throughout the whole file. So that's another reason why having the code as a writer was really beneficial. Now here's the quick little demo. How do you go about hiding these codes from the reader and not from the writer? And so for example, if I go ahead and let me undo my do this, and we'll do this just so I can, because I was experimenting last night. So let me show you one way I went about facilitating how to do that. So if you look at here, if I just render it in preview, the codes are still there. So using RegEx, I built myself a stamp that will loop through the text. And I can actually walk you through the methodical way I went about engineering the stamp, because that actually has some value in it too. But let me show you the end state. So I basically said, make v text equal to the text. Then I want you to do is build a list and go through the list by extracting everything that meets this regex pattern. And what this regex pattern is essentially saying is anything within brackets. And in regex, brackets are actually a special character. So in order to get a the regex engine to recognize the bracket as a bracket and not as a special character regex, you escape it with a backward slash. And so I essentially said, go find me every item that has a bracket, that starts with a bracket, but does not start with a bracket and a hashtag and an @ sign. And I'll show you an example of where that might be. If I'm doing my writing, and I'll just type it in here. Let's say I'm writing and I say Becker 2022. Here's a different pattern that might be in my text. So Becker 2022 is an example for me of a citation. And without the @ sign is the example of a variable code. So when I was running the regex, I had to say, go find me everything that's in between brackets. So here's the open bracket and here's the closed bracket, but not anything that has a bracket and starts with the @ sign, because then that way it would ignore my citations. And then what I want you to do is I want you to find anything from 1 to 50 characters, because some of these variable strings have multiple references within them. So I just kind of threw out the number 50 to make sure I captured them all. And I'll show you, and I can show you an example of how that might be done. So that's the regex that I put in here. And so this is essentially saying, hey, Tinderbox, when you're looking at a particular piece of text, go into the text and extract everything that's included in these. What I then want you to do is I then want you to go into the list that you've just created for me and actually put a / in front of the brackets, so those brackets are treated as brackets and not as a special character in regex. So do both for the open and closing bracket. And then what I want you to do is start iterating through that list and go through the text and stick into the text span style display equals none, including the item that you've now extracted, and then close the span. And then I want you to go back and replace that variable into the text. And then for the sake of purposes of testing, I said, I don't want you to destroy my original text, because I'm going to be iterating this a lot when I was doing the development. So I want you to stick the results of that exercise that you just did for me in the text. And so now if I go ahead and delete that, so it's clean, and I apply that stamp, you'll see that this just expanded. So that tells me that this note just got a text into it. And you'll now see that the Tinderbox has gone through and dutifully stuck in a span throughout my text. So now if I preview it, all of those variables are gone. So that way I have the ability to maintain those codes for me when for me as for the writer and the researcher, and it's incredibly valuable and helps for all those benefits I said. But for the reader, and when I publish it out of Tinderbox and into Word or an HTML page, the reader doesn't have to be inundated with that. And there's tons of other background that I can provide on this detail, but I'm going to leave that to the 10 minutes. Okay. Hi, Kat.